I'm now call the meeting of the Post Advisory Committee to order and welcome you all here. We are going to start with a moment of silence honoring the officers who lost their lives in the line of duty since the last meeting. And our agenda only shows one officer, but I'm going to recognize more than that have been lost. Police Officer 2, Fernando Arroyos from the Los Angeles Police Department, end of watch January 10th, 2022. Police Officer Tyler Linehan, the Elk Grove Police Department, end of watch January 21st, 2022. Sergeant Arthur Duron, Fowler Police Department, end of watch February 2nd, 2022. Police Officer Nicholas Vela, Huntington Beach Police Department, end of watch February 19th, 2022. And Police Officer Jorge David Alvarado Jr., Salinas Police Department, end of watch February 25th, 2022. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. May we have a roll call of our committee members, please?
Banning, Beauchamp. Beauchamp, are you there?
And a reminder, please unmute your mic when you answer up to the roll call.
Bernard, DiBasilio.
Here, DiBasilio here, sorry.
Oborn,
Here.
Salazar. Schmidt.
Here.
Spry,
Present, ma'am.
Swift. Viramontes,
Here.
Waltz.
Here,
Thank you.
thank you. I'd now like to introduce attending in this meeting, the Post Executive Director, Manny Alvarez, and the Assistant Executive Director, Maria Sandoval. We'll move to public comment. This is the time set aside for members of the public to comment on items on the agenda. The chair will manage the public comment period in deference to the committee's workload and meeting time constraints. Up to 15 minutes is allotted at the beginning of each meeting for public comments on items on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to speak are asked to limit their remarks to no more than 5 minutes each. If we have many people who wish to speak on the same topic, I, as the chair, may intervene and will ask that you limit remarks to no more than 1 minute. Pursuant to existing commission policy, the chair may conclude the public comment period if multiple speakers are voicing repetitive or similar statements and the 15-minute public comment period has expired. Please remember that this meeting is being transcribed, so I may politely interrupt and ask you to repeat or speak slowly and clearly so your comment can be correctly captured in the transcript. If there is anyone watching who would like to address the committee during public comment, please call in to the number shown on the screen at this time. We will take the calls on a first come, first served basis. If other persons are in the queue waiting to speak, you will be placed on hold until it is your turn to address the committee. You will know when it is your turn to speak when you hear that you are unmuted. Once again, you will know it is your turn to speak when you hear unmuted. We will wait for approximately 1 minute to allow for individuals to call in. When it is your turn, if you wish, please state your name and organization.
We do have one caller on the line, Sheriff.
Okay. If you're there, go ahead. Are they unmuted?
They are unmuted and not speaking.
If anybody is on the line and has public comment, please go ahead. Are there any other public comments?
There are none in the queue.
Okay, we will move forward. Our next item is approval of the minutes from the previous committee meeting. We have an action summary and meeting minutes of December 8th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved by Kathy Oborn.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Viramontes. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That motion carries. Are there any announcements?
Sheriff, I believe we have to do a roll call since we're virtual.
Oh, okay. Let's do a roll call on the motion to approve the minutes of December 8th.
Banning, Beauchamp, Bernard,
Yes.
DiBasilio,
If so, approved.
Oborn,
Yes.
Salazar, Schmidt,
Yes.
Spry,
Yes, ma'am.
Swift, Viramontes,
Yes.
Waltz,
Yes.
and Young. Thank you.
Okay, now the motion carries. Are there any announcements? No announcements? And now we'll move on to the review of the commission meeting agenda. Are there any presentations that we're receiving today?
Sheriff, no advisory committee member has requested for any agenda presentation. So just to confirm,
Is it too late to request?
no, it is not.
Okay. So I did not submit mine in time, but I would like to get on number 6 for the consent agenda, SB2.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to call up Bureau Chief Jackie Nelson and Bureau Chief Colin O'Keefe, and also Chief Sylvia Moyer, who is online. We'll go ahead and start with Bureau Chief Jackie Nelson.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present this morning on an update of SB2. I'm Jackie Nelson, and I'm the Bureau Chief overseeing the transition team. So my presentation today will be twofold. First, I'm going to give you an update on the implementation of SB2 so far. And second, I'm going to provide you with an overview of the work still to come. So we began the full-time implementation on November 1st, 2021, And in that short amount of time, we've been very successful and made significant progress. We still have a tremendous amount of work to do. So before I begin the overview, each step I'm about to detail consists of significant work by our Computer Services Bureau. They've worked tirelessly to support these efforts throughout, so thank you to them. So how did we start? How do we start our implementation? So we focused on those items that went into effect on January 1st, 2022, which involved the hiring selection standards. After identifying what those changes were, we included new disqualifiers which included new disqualifiers and minimum hiring standards, and we had to make immediate notification to the field. So post issued bulletin number 2021-47 detailing these changes. We created an SB2 page on Post's website, along with an FAQ page to help answer questions. We leveraged the regional consultants to distribute information and direct inquiries to the transition team. So after that, one of our first projects was to do a workload analysis and staffing model. As a reminder, there is not an apples to apples comparison to determine workload. So we used 3 different methods and did an estimate on what we believed the closest projection for workload consisted of. After which we completed the staffing model to fit the workload analysis. Each of the positions identified required an hourly task breakdown for the entire year to support each position requested. So as you can imagine, this was a very tedious process while working with a lot of unknown factors. So moving on, we then, in order to bring effective regulations into compliance with the new mandates, we submitted several Section 100 changes to regulation. These were fairly straightforward because they were anchored by legislation. So an example of that would be the new minimum age of 21 years of age at the time of appointment that was conducted through a Section 100 regulation change. We're currently updating the personal history statement to be compliant with SB2, along with creating a newly created verification form, which will be mandated as part of the background. Post has developed several forms as training aids or tools to help agencies with the new requirements, which will be available soon. The background manual and background investigator scores are also being updated to reflect the changes as well. Post developed a specific California law enforcement portal with the National Decertification Index to support the mandate that agencies query the system as part of the hiring process. So agencies do not have the authority to go direct to the index unless they have been previously authorized by Post. This is a requirement by the index. So we had to create and develop a process to allow for that query by each agency to be able to do that. So that's been a lot of work as well. We've been working on modifying our internal systems, what we call an EDI. I'm sure you all know what that is, to update our agency inspection database to be inclusive of the new requirements. This will benefit our regional consultants while they're out doing their agency compliance audits in the field. So moving on to the proof of eligibility, which you've all heard, and it's mandated by SB2. So there are 2 components to this. The first component is post responsibility. And that is issuing proof of eligibility to any currently employed peace officer who does not already possess a basic certificate. So what that means is we have to, effective January 1, 2023, do a retro issuance of these individuals. And this is a one-time only mandate for Post. So we've been working diligently on this process, which is heavily dependent on IT platforms. We've identified approximately 6,400 peace officers who will need to be issued a POE on January 1st, 2023. Sorry, POE is short for proof of eligibility. I apologize. To ensure these peace officers are eligible, we've begun auditing each officer's records before we issue the POE to ensure compliance for each one. So the second component of the POE is the hiring agency's responsibility. Beginning January 1, 2023, agencies must apply for the proof of eligibility for any newly hired officer who does not already possess a basic. So this will be the process moving forward. Agencies will be able to apply for the certification using our existing EDI system. The notice of appointment will include an attestation from the agency stating the appointee meets all of the new hiring standards. Post has already created the attestation, which will be incorporated into the new notice of appointment. Once Post receives the notice of appointment and confirms it is complete, Post will issue a proof of eligibility. It's at this time, the officer will be appointed to the Post agency roster, and the officer's profile will be updated to include their certification. The workflow for this process is coming along very well and should be ready by implementation date. So because we're going to be issuing a certification based on the agency's attestation, it is likely during an agency compliance audit that we will find backgrounds which were not totally complete or correct. So we had to create a process for and a regulation on how to resolve the situation to ensure compliance. And so we are coming along really well with that right now. So long-term, the goal for Post will be to review background investigations electronically online before we issue the proof of eligibility. However, that is not part of the initial implementation. That will come in the next phase. So we've put a lot of time into developing the logistics of the case management and investigations component. We are finalizing the complaint form now. It is nearly done. The process to allow citizens to file complaints online directly to Post is ready to go. And we will be making other forms available for filing complaints to members of the public. Several new regulations have been drafted regarding the investigations and officers' rights. The draft investigative procedures and policies manual have been written based on outreach conducted with other states and California agencies. And all of the required notification documents listed in SB2 have been drafted as well and are pretty well completed. So we've been working closely with the Department of Justice to coordinate the transfer of criminal records as mandated for the decertification purposes. So the groundwork has been established through between Post and DOJ, and we're continuing to work on this collaboratively. As required by SB2, Post is in the final revision of the Affidavit of Separation. As you know, that is now required for every time an employee, or I'm sorry, peace officer separates from employment regardless of the reason. So the Affidavit of Separation will become part of the new notice of termination. The bill also provides for peace officers to, if they choose to voluntarily surrender their certification, the process for the surrender is completed along with all the associated documentation required. Also, as you know, once Post makes a recommendation, take action against a peace officer certification, the officer may request a review before the Peace Officer Standards Accountability Advisory Board and the Commission. We have finalized this process and are just finishing the details on that now. So SB2 requires Post to develop a 40-hour course for members of the Peace Officer Accountability Advisory Board. Post has started this process, identified topics, identified subject matter experts, and is working on curriculum development for that course. We have created a draft of the hearing procedure manual for the board, similar to the manual that this body has to abide by. Post has met with the Office of Administrative Hearings to create the workflow of the cases that will be forwarded to an administrative law judge for an evidentiary hearing. There's still quite a bit of work to be done on this since there's a lot of legal components associated with this. We have conducted a significant amount of outreach with involved stakeholders and will continue to do so. So Post is scheduled to create an informational video, which will be distributed as a reference point here shortly. So we've worked diligently to identify those agencies that are not Post participating, but mandated under SB2. So we will be doing outreach to those agencies to begin their introduction to Post and get them into compliance with the new requirements. We're estimating right now that we have approximately 50 agencies that are not post-participating. We've spent a lot of time researching IT platforms that can meet the needs of SB2. So we need a system which will allow nearly 700 agencies to report cases of serious misconduct to a single system. This is no small feat, as you can imagine. However, in the unlikely event, I sound like an airline. In the unlikely event of okay, anyway, sorry, I'll continue. In the unlikely event that we cannot get this done by January 1, 2023, we've created a draft contingency plan to allow Post to comply with SB2 using alternate methods. So at this time, I'd like to turn this over to Computer Services Bureau Chief Colin O'Keefe to provide an update on the procurement of the IT platform, and then I will come back and continue my overview. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Good morning. Colin O'Keefe, Bureau Chief for Computer Services here at Post. As Jackie just mentioned, and as you know, SB2 requires California law enforcement agencies to report incidents of alleged officer misconduct, commencement of investigations, and investigative dispositions to Post. And we will need some sort of case management system to facilitate that. The volume of agency reports is estimated to be in the low thousands per year to start. And receiving, routing, storing, and analyzing this information cannot be accommodated using the paper records and email processes. And because SB2 imposes new mandates, current Post systems are not geared toward this functionality, so we'll require a new system rather than upgrades or enhancements to systems in place. So in preparation for these mandates, both law enforcement consultant and technical staff at Post evaluated at a high level 7 different off-the-shelf as well as custom solutions for both technical capability and business suitability. Staff received overviews from vendor representatives, traveled to other state Post agencies to analyze comparable business processes, and met with several California law enforcement agencies that have implemented a variety of case management and record management systems. During this research, staff identified the vendor-provided system called Mark 43, which appears to meet business and technical requirements. The product also has a presence at several California state agencies, including CHP, Parks, and others. Other systems we evaluated also have varying degrees of similar functionality and could be potential alternatives if the need arises. Finally, in anticipation of this contract request that will be presented at the Finance Committee, in December of 2021, Post staff submitted mandatory Stage 1 business analysis and financial analysis documentation to the California Department of Technology's Oversight Division. Department of Technology's approval, as well as project funding, are pending. If approved by the Commission at the Finance Committee, system procurement, implementation, and configuration should not exceed $2 million for the first year, and recurring costs after the first year are estimated to be $1.8 million, dependent on the number of agency user licenses required. I'm happy to take any questions about the case management system before sending it back to Jackie.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I'll continue on and certainly will happy to address any questions you may have at the end of our presentation as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the regulations to support SB2. We realize that these regulations are foundational and ongoing. It's safe to say that there will be modifications and more regulations as this process unfolds. I hope that these bodies bear with us as we work our way through that process. So currently, as of right now, we've modified 9 existing regulations and created 14 new regulations, which will be presented to the full commission in May. We've worked closely with the Office of Administrative Law on these regulations and have a designated point of contact because of the volume of work and the importance and significance of the regulations that we are creating. So we anticipate that these regulations are going to be put out for public comment on March 25th of this year in order to meet the timeline associated with the bill implementation date. So one regulation I want to bring into particular is the regulation we will be creating about the definition of serious misconduct. So As you guys know, SB2 required the commission to place into regulation a definition of serious misconduct, which included some minimal content that had to be included. So how did POST start the process of helping the commission come up with this definition? We held 2 workshops with different stakeholder groups to obtain input about what should be included in the definition. So in order for POST to remain as neutral as possible in that process, we had facilitators conduct these workshops on behalf of POST. So one of the facilitators is with us today and is here to present information obtained from the workshops to you for your consideration. So at this time, I'd like to introduce retired Chief Sylvia Moyer, who will present information regarding the process that unfolded. So Chief, if you wouldn't mind, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. How's the sound?
Good, Sylvia, you're good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, thank you to you, the advisory committee, and good morning. It is really a profound honor for myself and the team that I'm part of to support Californians, California policing, and California Post in this effort to interpret and implement the significant legislation. And Jackie is kind of teed up for you. What I will give you is an excruciatingly brief and high-level understanding of what we are going to present at commission today. Really, our team and our process, our team is really 3 people that we were brought to bear and buttress the very important work that is being done, and buttress the team, the capable but very thinly stretched team and heavily burdened Post team in this effort. So my hunch is that we were asked to be part of this because we are 3 recently retired executives from policing and law enforcement. And I served in California for nearly 30 years and then most recently retired from a state that has peace officer certification. Another member of our team is from another state, Illinois, that has peace officer certification. So we dove in. So this is what we're going to present today at commission. We're going to talk about the process of assembling key input sources, as Jackie just referenced, from all levels of law enforcement in California, and then the key collaborators as identified by the author, Senator Bradford's office. We're going to talk about how Post can interpret the law and ideas leading to regulatory language. We're going to present some options for a definition of serious misconduct for the consideration by the Post Commission, and briefly describe the inputs that led to an understanding about the 9 characteristics of conduct. So the aim is going to be to review the draft, to review the 9 areas of and characteristics of conduct that would lead to a review by the board for peace officer certification and consideration. Then we are going to attempt to work with the commission today to seek constructive input for consideration in a crisp fashion, not complete creation today, but a very crisp fashion of what comes up for them. And then finally, an understanding that Jackie will provide and the team will provide regarding the timing for this Post Commission to process this massive amount of information and the decision-making deadlines that they are facing. So we will review 2 definitions of serious misconduct. Rather than bringing those up for your digestion, I'm going to just verbally read those to you. And when I do this, the ask for you is just to consider that this is a coupling of not only the legislation, the intent, but it is derived from the law enforcement practitioners that we assembled and those that were assembled that are the collaborators from across the state of California as identified by Senator Bradford's office. So I'm going to read these to you and see if anything comes up for you that you would like to add. The one is serious misconduct is a single or repeated act or omission which violates one or more of what will be listed, set forth below the 9 criteria demonstrating an officer's failure to uphold the community, ethical, and professional standards, therefore temporarily or permanently reflecting a lack of fitness to serve as a peace officer in the state of California. That's an important distinction that we will derive because it's a different question. Conduct that would violate an agency, policy, or procedure versus that which precludes an individual from either serving as a police officer in California temporarily or permanently. That's an important distinguishing characteristic of the legislation. So the second offering of a definition of serious misconduct is this. Serious misconduct is a single or repeated act or omission which violates one or more of the 9 criteria set forth below. Those are those 9 characteristics, demonstrating an officer's failure to uphold the community, ethical, and professional standards, prompting a review to determine the ineligibility or revocation of a peace officer certification. The important thing for this is that the commission is going to be provided these 2 examples. They're going to have an opportunity to give input that the entire team will digest and then present in May. So we're going to present those definition drafts, then going to dive into the input that was given to each of the 9 criteria. I'm just going to list the criteria for you so it's top of mind. Number 1 is dishonesty. Number 2 is abuse of power. 3 is physical abuse. 4 is sexual assault. 5 is bias. 6 is sufficiently egregious. It is a definition that we have to come up with for sufficiently egregious. 7 is a law enforcement gang. 8, failure to cooperate. And 9, final, is failure to intercede. Those are the 9 areas of conduct that would, if an officer as a single or repeated act or omission of any of those 9 would prompt a review by the board for a suspension or revocation of one certification as a peace officer in California. So we're going to go into that in depth in the meeting, but for you, just wanted to highlight and be, like I said, excruciatingly brief so that you have a consciousness and understanding of how we're going to proceed in the commission meeting, and then just open this up for anything that you want to provide in terms of input. So that is my very brief statement to you, my briefing for you. And I have to again reiterate that your input, your contribution as part of this advisory committee really enriches California policing. And I appreciate you tackling this as part of your ancillary responsibilities and leadership imperative in California. So thank you. Jackie, back to you.
Great, thank you, Chief. That was a fantastic overview. I appreciate that. So in conclusion, before I finish up to hit and open for questions to you, I just want to talk to you about just a few steps that are forthcoming still that we have to look at, albeit there will be many more. These are just some highlighted ones that we know are in our near future. So we are in the process, and we are still need to do identifying processes at every level of this implementation, to include the policies, procedures, desk manuals, those types of things. We need to write duty statements for all of the projected 127 positions that will be required to pull off SB2. We need to complete the hiring and selection of those 127 positions. And then we have to onboard. Are we good, Tobias? Look like we're, okay, sorry. Look like we lost video. And then we have to onboard and train all of those 127 people in a pretty quick turnaround time frame. One of the areas we have not dedicated very much time to as of yet is the public records component. There are a lot of details in SB2 that still need our listed as far as the public records that we need to pay, get some detailed attention afforded to, including how will we manage the significant increase that we are expecting to receive as a matter of the implementation. So that's an area we still need to to put a lot of work into. Obviously, as Colin spoke earlier, our IT platform, that's our biggest lift that we're expecting coming forward. So not only getting the platform on board, but getting that platform to meet the needs as we have them. And then deploying and providing training on that IT platform to all of these 700-ish agencies across the state is going to be a huge lift. We are going to start next week actually developing a communications plan and outreach plan to try to get this information out to as many people as possible. And then, of course, we have to train the Accountability Advisory Board on their roles and expectations. And then obviously the commission will need to be trained specifically to the decertification process as well as we move forward. So that's just a highlight of some things that we know we still have pending. And I don't intend that to be inclusive because we know there are a lot of moving parts and areas still to get to on this. But having said that, in conclusion, before I open it up for comments and questions from this body, I just want to say I am very grateful for the work that this team has done thus far, and everyone within Post. We have accomplished tremendous amount of work considering that we are doing this with no additional staffing or funding. We're doing this as an ancillary or a secondary assignment. So for that, I thank the team that has supported this all the way. And of course, our executive office who has supported this tremendously. So having said that, I will stop talking now and I will turn it over for questions for anything you may have for any of us present here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie and Colin and Chief Moyer and your teams. I know it's been said many times through the past months about what a heavy lift this is. And I can't even believe there's so much that's being done already, and there's so much more ahead of us. A couple questions I have, and I wasn't writing fast enough, but you mentioned about agencies applying for certification for new employees, and when does that, you set a date and I didn't catch it.
Yes, so agencies will have to begin doing their application for certification of their staff on January 1 of 23.
Okay. And then is that also when the affidavit of separation comes into play, and is that going to be incorporated in the EDI component?
Yes, so we'll have two different systems. All of our hiring processes will still continue to go through our EDI platform. And then the investigative case management system will be a separate system, which is the IT platform that Colin was talking about. So yes, that would be correct.
Okay, and then whoever can answer this, it's probably in the legislation, but the 9 categories, dishonesty, abuse of power, etc. Are there specific definitions of those components yet?
Can you clarify that question for me, please, Sheriff?
There were the 9 categories: dishonesty, abuse of power, physical abuse, sexual assault, bias, sufficient egregiousness, law enforcement gang, and failure to cooperate, failure to intercede. Are there specific definitions of each of those?
So we took input during the stakeholder meetings with the 2 different workshops, and we are trying to come up with the definition in advance for the commission to review so that they can further define each one of those 9. So yes, we are working on bringing that forward to the commission as well.
Any other committee members have questions?
Yeah, Randy, I'd like to follow up with the 9 categories. As I wrote them down, all of them had a question mark next to them because one of them, like law enforcement gang, like what is the definition of a law enforcement gang? And who, your subject matter experts obviously will also be able to contribute to those definitions, but I believe that there's opinions about them. And we have to make, you know, it is very important to know that every single category on all these, just like all the other stuff we do with internal affairs and all these citizen complaints and et cetera, as we do in California, have specifics on each of, you know, these violations. So that was the first one that caught my attention, just because we have our own opinions about them. And then I have a question about Mark 43. Is that the only case management system that will be used, or are there different systems besides Mark 43?
Like that. Yeah, thank you. We evaluated several different systems, and at the moment, it appears that Mark 43 as a single installed system would meet our needs. The specific requirement that hung us up over the others was agency submission. A lot of existing case management systems are basically closed rooms. They don't allow outsiders to contribute information, which in this case we need for that data to be transmitted from agencies to Post. And it appears that Mark 43 would be a singular system that would allow us to do that and then route internally and process it.
I am aware of many agencies that are using them and have had some issues with that system. So I'm sure that as Post moves forth with implementing Mark 43 as a case management system, then maybe by then some of these have been fixed throughout other agencies throughout California.
Randy, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can I?
Sorry, go ahead.
The second question that Ms. Fry had moving forward on the 9 characteristics. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was more of a followed up with Randy about, yeah, I agree. Those, you know, they would have to be, you know, each category will have to have their subcategories of definitions. And that was definitely a list of a question I had as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, on the complaint form that was discussed, I think it's the electronic form that's going to be on the Post website. Is that to initiate the complaints moving forward that would venture into those 9 categories? Is that what that is for?
Partially, that's correct. Yes. So the legislation requires that Post be able to accept complaints from members of the public or citizens. And so that would be one area in which we could receive the investigations on the 9 areas that we're discussing or serious misconduct. It's important though to point out that once we do receive those complaints, we will be coordinating with the individual agency for one to find out if they are already investigating the same complaint. And if not, we will be referring that back to the agency for investigation, and then it'll come back to us at the tail end. So that would be just one component. Otherwise, the agencies will have to report directly to us utilizing our case management system once they become aware of a potential allegation of misconduct that would meet the definition that Chief Moyer was talking about.
Great. Yeah, you answered both. I was going to ask you to follow up with they came to the agency, but
Yeah,
you answered that already. So the agency is going to be responsible too for the two-way communication with Post, and Post vice versa. If Post receives a complaint, they then send it to the agency, at least as an advisory, or is this talking about just new complaints, or what about complaints that go into the rear as well, like prior complaints? So if you had a guy who had made an IA complaint, say in 2015, it was unsustained by the agency, they still have the ability, correct, to go online with Post, fill out that complaint form, and then Post then has a two-way communication with the agency. But it has to be those 9 criteria, right? It's not something, oh, he yelled at me during a traffic stop and I didn't like it, something like that.
yeah, that's exactly correct. So
Okay.
it does have to meet one of those 9 definitions or characteristics of serious misconduct.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, did I miss a date when those were going to be further discussed? Does that go to commission for discussion, or does that go somewhere else?
So the process that we have for that as of right now is we are going to open that definition up for public comment on May 25th.
May
And
25th,
we-
okay.
Yeah, so then we will have input from them that we can take public comment into consideration. And if we need to make any modifications to the definition, we can do that before we present the final regulation to commission in May. And that would be the method that we're going forward on, getting that put into regulation.
Okay. So is it March 25th or May 25th that it'll be published?
March 25th is the public.
March 25th. Okay.
It has
I'm
to-
sorry that it'll go to public. Yeah.
Yep, that's okay. It has to be open for 45 days pursuant to the OAL rulemaking policies, laws,
Right.
regulations. So, yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And just to be clear, all of this has to be completed for the January 2023 implementation, correct?
That's correct. Yes, very condensed time frame.
Any other committee members have questions? Okay, again, thank you to you and your teams. And I apologize for giving the short notice on having, I know you're repeating this afternoon. So, but all right, let's go back to our commission agenda. Are there any other items on the consent agenda? That's items 1 through 10 that any committee members have comments or questions about. Okay. And the finance committee will be meeting later. Next would be item D. Report on increase of spending authority for the executive director. And I've read all the supporting documentation and also the information that was presented in the last commission meeting and finance meeting on this. Anybody have any comments about this item? Is there any committee member that objects to our committee recommending approval of this item? The next would be item E, report on amendment to Commission Regulation 1005 minimum standards for training. This has to do with repealing sections that have to do with investigation trial preparation course because that's being replaced by the district attorney investigator transition course. Does anybody have any comments on this item? Does anybody have any objection to us as a body recommending the approval of this item? Okay. That covers the commission agenda items. Did I miss anything, Maria?
No, you have not.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to advisory committee member reports. And I'm going to be calling on you in the order that you happen to appear on my screen. Julie, do you have a report?
I have questions in regards to the committee's time and like how can I find out where all the positions are in regards to like your position as a chair? Do we have a VP on our committee? I have just information about that. I don't know if this is the right place to do that because honestly, I'm learning as I go along with this.
This would be a time for you to, if you have a report from your organization that you're representing.
Mm-hmm. No, I did speak to who I'm representing and there was nothing to report based off today's agenda.
Okay, thank you. Eric,
Nothing to report. Thank you, Randy.
Kathy.
Yeah, just a question. Can we find out what's happening with AB 89 since we lost Shenu Weber from the Chancellor's office? And it would be great to know how it's going to affect the criminal justice, administration of justice programs in the state of California.
They have nominated somebody to fill her seat. At this point, our legislative liaison, Megan Polis, said that there's no update at this point. But we are going to fill her seat.
Yes, Shenu's seat on the commission, on our advisory committee.
Right.
We were informed that there was going to be a committee formed to look at implementation for AB 89. And I know I've bugged Chief Salazar about it and some other people, but nothing has risen to the top in terms of how we can participate and be part of have a voice in what's going on. Manny?
Yep. Mr. Chair, may I interject?
Please do.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Member Oborn, obviously there's been some transition at the Community College Chancellor's office. This afternoon, the Post Commission will hear the nomination for a new person to replace Vice Chancellor Weber. Her name is Sandra Sanchez from the College Chancellor's office. So that will be heard this afternoon. If they approve, then she will be part of the advisory committee starting in May. In terms of the implementation of AB 89, obviously that falls to the Community College Chancellor's office to put those things together. We had a discussion with the Chancellor's office about 2 months ago, and they were in the process of putting that together. So we have not heard yet on any subcommittees or been asked to participate in that process. Although obviously the legislation calls for us and others to be participants. I think they're just getting started.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next, Juan.
I have nothing, sir.
Sheriff De Basilio.
I have nothing. Thank you, Sheriff.
And finally, representing California Highway Patrol.
Nothing for me, and I apologize. I got internet issues, got kicked out of the meeting if I missed anything, but nothing.
You're going to have to make sure you make that payment on your AOL subscription.
You got it.
Okay. And my report from Capco is that we've actually gotten a little boost, a little energy in our organization, and we have a oncoming new executive director who's retired about a little over a year ago, and is going to be doing some traveling and trying to not only create new chapters, but also incorporate with LETMAs around the state and do a lot more of intercommunication with our LETMAs. That concludes our advisory committee member reports, unless I left somebody out. No, okay. Next item, F, commissioner comments. Are there any commissioners who would like to make comments here?
Hi, it's Joyce, and I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your no comment. And I don't see any other commissioners on here, and there is no old business. The new business listed would be Tammy Morrell, chairperson of CADA, California Academy Directors Association, has nominated Walter Allen for appointment to the advisory committee to fill the CADA seat. And in our presence, Professor Kathy Oborn, president of California Association of Justice Educators, KG, is up for reappointment. Current term expires May 2022. The commission will be addressing that this afternoon. Future meetings listed. I don't see any Zoom meetings here. That's a good thing. May 24th through 26th, 2022, San Diego, California.
Sheriff,
August.
that has been changed. The location has been changed for the May 24th through 26th. It's going to be in the beautiful thriving metropolis of West Sacramento due to some financial restraints that we're currently facing at Post.
Understood. Subsequent to that would be August 31st, September 1st. Location is to be determined. November 30th through December 1st, 2022, again in West Sacramento. Moving on to 2023, March 1st and 2nd to be determined, and June 7th and 8th, 2023 in West Sacramento. Are there any other comments or items to be presented? And Executive Director Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for interjecting. Thank you. For the first time, I think ever, I have to clarify or correct something that I've said that was incorrect. We have not received a formal nomination for Ms. Sanchez. So we will be, we received something informally. It just hasn't been a formal request yet. So I misspoke saying that they would hear it this afternoon. They will not hear it this afternoon. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Assistant Executive Director Sandoval. We had discussed appointing a chair and vice chair. We have a kind of a skeleton crew today. Do we want to move forward with, or are we able to move forward with that, considering who we have or who we don't have in attendance today?
There is no need for a quorum if that's what you're asking. If this is something that you want to move forward through as a group, we can go ahead and do that. This is the meeting that we are supposed to do the nominations for the chair and the vice chair. It's completely up to this group.
My suggestion, seeing how few committee members are attending, would be to agendize it for the beginning of our next meeting, which is scheduled to be in person, and turn over the gavel after the introduction and the beginning of the meeting.
Sheriff, this is Rick. I would agree with that.
Not that I want to hang on to this chair in that much longer, but I think that to find people that are interested in chairing the meetings and leading this committee.
Kind of getting the impression that you are trying to hang on to this chair, but that's fine. We will put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think my question got answered. Thank you.
Okay, any other items before we adjourn?
Just one more issue, Sheriff. If you need to find any information about the makeup of the advisory board and the terms, it is on our website. If you need some help finding it, let me know and I will send you the link.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, everyone.